Now, wouldn't a Nintendo NX2 basically just be a Nintendo Switch remaster? The latest rumor sphere in the world of gaming is all focused on John Marston and his alleged comeback in the form of a new release of the iconic, classic Red Dead Redemption. Now yes, this industry has indulged in remasters and re-releases for quite a while, but in 2023, this is no longer the days of Super Mario All-Stars. These are the days of Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 2 HD. Despite getting some form of reissuing classic games, what feels like every week, almost constantly these days, there still seems to be some debate and disagreement in what constitutes what type of re-release. So today, we're talking about remakes versus remasters, and what Red Dead Redemption should be. Now, before we go any further, I need to prepare you that further along in this episode, I will be introducing a third classification of re-release that you will need time to prepare for. I would also hope this goes without saying, but I am not a game developer, so if there is some Gen 8, Gen 9 classification that happens on their end, I'm unfamiliar. This is just my own view of things and how I make sense of all the re-releases we get. Firstly, let's talk about remasters, because those are the easiest ones to define. Low Poly defines remaster as when a video game gets brought to a newer generation of console in a higher resolution and or frame rate. It may include cleaner audio, crisper textures, could have slightly altered game feel or controls, but is all intents the same game that released years prior. Some examples of remasters are any of the Kingdom Hearts collections, Uncharted the Nathan Drake collection, any next-gen upgrade like The Witcher 3 for PS5, Dark Souls Remastered, the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection. By and large, if you play one of these, you basically play the original, although there may be some purists that have beef with something, like fonts. Low Poly defines remake as when a classic video game gets brought back for modern times by completely demolishing the original version and reconstructing it with modern sensibilities while attempting to maintain the original spirit that people fell in love with to begin with. Clear examples of remakes are The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening for the Nintendo Switch, Resident Evil for the GameCube, Pokemon Fire Red Leaf Green or Pokemon Heart Gold Soul Silver, the Demon's Souls remake Shadow of the Colossus, you get the idea. With these games, you'll almost assuredly have a different experience playing the original and its remake. So much so that there is value in seeking out both if you really enjoy one or the other, to either reaffirm why you think the remake was better, or to become enraged that they ruined your favorite character model from the original. Remakes used to be simple to define, but with games like Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I would argue the modern Resident Evil remakes, albeit to a lesser extent, are more so reimaginings than anything else, at least compared to the more traditional definition we've established here. But don't worry, that's not the third pillar I warned you about. Think of reimaginings more as a subheading of a remake in classification, where a reimagining is almost always a remake, but a remake is not always a reimagining. Now, for the third pillar in the re-release nomenclature, I am excited to reveal to the world the remakester. Low Poly defines remakester as when something is halfway between a remaster and a remake, where the original game in some form, be it voice work, code, AI, is somewhere beneath it all, the same way we see with a remaster. However, there is an overhaul in art, character models, and or gameplay that conveys more work went into this than a remaster. It may also have a silly title. The best example of this, in my eyes, is Nier Replicant version 1.22. But I think none of you fucking played that one because 2B isn't in it. So instead, think Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask for the 3DS, or, and again, this is just my opinion on it, the more recent Metroid Prime Remastered and The Last of Us Part 1. In both instances, these games are incredibly faithful to their original releases, but they go the extra mile in building off those foundations for modern sensibilities, like a right analog stick camera or a more expansive accessibility suite. But for the incredible success that both of these, what I would call remakesters, have seen, we also have to look at the opposite side where things can go for the worse. The Grand Theft Auto Trilogy Definitive Edition. By our definitions, these games would qualify as remakesters. where we had the remasters in the form of the HD versions of these games, which have since been delisted from storefronts. But then Grove Street Games entered the chat and provided us this, and some things were damaged, including reputations. Now, when it comes to the original Red Dead Redemption, it is currently in 2023 only available on the Xbox Digital Marketplace. It was recently found on a Korean ratings board, and Take-Two has mentioned that a previously released game is coming this fiscal year. 2, in fact. Combine that with the fact that Red Dead Redemption 2 alone has sold more than some entire PlayStation and Xbox franchises, it makes sense that a re-release is probably coming. So what is it that Red Dead Redemption deserves? A remaster? Well, one could argue since the Xbox Back Compat program already allows users to play the game in 4K compared to the original release, it wouldn't be adding that much more. Kind of boring. A remake, though, now this is more promising. Red Dead Redemption 2 makes a lot of changes to the identity of the original release, mainly in its pacing, thanks to the core mechanics, the length of the game, and the quality of dramatic writing and acting. As much as I would love both of these games to feel more cohesive, I do think there is something you would lose in remaking Red Dead Redemption in Red Dead 2's spirit. At that point, I think this would be closer to a reimagining than a remake. So where does that leave us with Red Dead Redemption? Well, it seems like a remakester. I think that would be a nice middle ground where you would maintain the identity and special feel of Red Dead Redemption that separates it from Red Dead Redemption 2, and would also allow John to reference Arthur Morgan at least like one time. And in the case of this remakester, it would not be called Red Dead Remastered or Red Dead Remake. That's silly. It would be called Red Dead Redemption Remastered Edition. And let's just hope that this doesn't end up like Rockstar's other remaster, the GTA trilogy. That's all for Low Poly this week. I'll see you next time. I've been busy dealing with a deluge of new social media platforms, so I have not yet been able to finish Final Fantasy XVI. But after 21 hours, my PS5 is telling me I'm roughly 62% of the way through that game. I got 3 praises and 1 pause to throw at you. Relatively spoiler-free. Praise 1 is its pacing. I was a little concerned, admittedly, after picking up the game and replaying the prologue after I did the demo, which I thought moved excellently. When we jump to modern day and meet Sid the following hour, it was a little jarring seeing Jill wish on a star with Clive, and then a short blink later she's an enslaved god that we fight and then save. But the game reaches a point where it's kind of built in arcs, where you get side quests at the hideaway and then ramp up to a big story moment that has a sick resolution, rinse and repeat, and I like that pace. Praise 2. It's so ambitious, it shut off my PS5. I have been pretty critical of the PS5 up to this point, where I feel like there hasn't been a true PS5 showpiece reason to have a PS5, but admittedly, ever since it was revealed, I told myself I would buy a PS5 for Final Fantasy XVI, Spider-Man 2, and Death Stranding 2. And Final Fantasy XVI is the first of those 2 released, and I am happy to say after a year of owning a PS5, it is absolutely pushing my PS5 to its limits. For now, at least. It looks so stupid expensive in the best way, and is so technically intensive, that an extra wide Dragoon overheated my PS5 and shut it off. Praise 3, it respects my time. Now your mileage will vary here based off of how into the characters and story you are. I happen to be very into them. But I do love being able to know that I can just sit down for a night and see through an entire arc, side quests included, because they do not waste your time and often end with a really rewarding character moment for Clive or the cast, or giving you the ability to have like a mount. And lastly, the pause. I am now once again considering trying Final Fantasy XIV.